marshaled to allow people to leverage the full benefits of cloud with the patient record. And, in these days of data sovereignty, we've heard already that we need to separate data from the application. It needs to be standardized and all of those things. The cloud can actually support that very nicely and ensure that, we've got high availability and other functions that we're going to need for things like the international patient summary and 24/7 available records globally for those that are, say, traveling. So for me, cloud is not in conflict.
Padma, could I get your perspective on the same? So the opportunities and any potential conflicts between the very distributed cloud and international approach for cloud hosting versus these goals of us as good governors of health data?
Yeah, so thanks, David, for asking that question. Where cloud, when the data is on the cloud, it is available everywhere throughout the globe, but there should be government boards, governance boards need to be established, like you or ACN can interconnect just like aviation safety bodies they do, and also the certification standards like ISO 27001 or INISA create a baseline for assurance like a safety stamp on the food products. And Rachel's just mentioned, I believe, but patient voice need to be considered when the data is actually going on to the cloud and the patient records are not in one country, but they can travel. If I am in UK and I travel to US, my record travels with me. So that is the patient voice and the governance boards, the transparency. Patients must see who accessed their data. Like in India, ABDM has an audit trail, who has accessed, for what purpose it has accessed. So in the UK also, NHS involves patient representatives in data governance. So governance plays a major role when our data is on the cloud, and patients should be aware how their data is being used across the world. So I go for the transparency and the governance bodies and the certifications like ISO 27001 and then patient voice are the key roles in making the data though in the cloud, but accessed across the world.
And I think there's a good segue there, Padma, in terms of when we've referenced already public trust. So there is a need for us to assure the public that the practices we're putting in place do secure their data, but to my point earlier, do make their data useful for secondary use and research, because the public do want us to see the use of the data to progress models of care. And Rachel, you also referenced there, perhaps, in a world where trust between nations is potentially becoming a little bit frayed, and where the infrastructure is global, but accountability stays national, how we do that. Now, we've seen various programs across the NHS in the UK where trust has been lost in a data program, and it is delayed, if not cancelled, that program. Can I get your reflections on how we ensure and sustain trust in these solutions in terms of transparency, education, that side of things? And actually, if I could start with Padma on this one first.
Yeah. So again, coming back to there is when it comes to data sharing between the countries, right? As you rightly mentioned, there is a little bit of confusion, or there are some restrictions, because cloud makes data technically borderless from anywhere people can access, but the governance and accountability remain tied to the national laws. That is where various countries need to collaborate. This is the time for collaboration, because this mismatch can create friction. For example, Europe, through the GDPR and the European health data space, is trying to create harmonized rules for secondary use of data for research and also for the artificial intelligence. The US is fragmented, and already I mentioned the HIPAA and state laws. And cloud adoption, often driven by the private sector providers like the Epic or Cerner on AWS and Azure. And India, when it comes to the India, it has chosen a federated approach with the Ayushman Bharat digital mission, where health data stays local and tokens control the access. Africa and parts of Latin America are leapfrogging into the cloud first models, but risk dependency on big tech providers again. So, vendor lock in, again, we need to think of the vendor lock in. So, sometimes it may be like, looks like digital colonialism there. So we need to address this digital colonialism as well. These approaches reflect different balances between the sovereignty, innovation, and trust. So here we need to take the ethical choices in data sharing as countries. So what I believe is today European data governance space, European health data space, and GDPR and HIPAA, even ABDM, all these various countries should come collaborate together. That is the need of the hour to solve these data sharing challenges.
Rachel, if I can come to you for a similar response.
Yes, having been involved in some of the debates around the WHO wallet work, and having been, sort of working with lawyers who advocate on behalf of citizens, this is something that is going to be, it's not as simple as just building on the sort of vaccines infrastructure that we had for our COVID certificates. There may be very good reason why you would want to share certain data when traveling in some countries, but not all of your data when traveling in others. There is an absolute need for transparency, but most of all, there is a need for an education and engagement with citizens. And they need to build trust in whatever authority is representing their data. Now, that may be their government, or it may be that we have data trusts where you can actually have your data managed by a data trust. But there will be a need for citizens to either accept the default sharing settings or to tailor their own settings. And that is going to take quite a degree of infrastructure to set up. And that's the international picture. Obviously, within our health systems, like, Wales or England or wherever else, we have, a default sharing setting. But to try and achieve this for the globe is taking a lot of consideration and thought. And certainly I sit on the JIC, which is the standards body. So the top team from 12 different standards bodies. And we've been having increasing debate around strengthening the standards with ISO, to actually enable this to happen, because the governance around data is now becoming increasingly important. And we need to describe in standards globally to citizens what that will be and how it will operate.
I want to move us on to audience questions fairly promptly, but one last area to cover off with you is what each of you would see as the most promising areas for collaboration. So obviously Rachel with OpenEHR and the adoption of open standards, with Federation. What are the horses we should be backing in terms of ensuring that the data is made to greatest use for our citizens? And go on, Rachel. Sorry, you first, please.
For me, open standards are, key to this, and that is to make sure that the data is standardized. If we look at the sort of research from Peter Pronovost, between 20 and 30% of our healthcare system, its spend is wasteful. It's low value care, it's no value care, it's care that we deliver because we're not informed by the data. If we're going to deliver sustainable healthcare systems, which really, frankly, none in the Western world can continue with the uplift in spend year on year ongoing, we need to address that sort of efficiency piece around delivering the right care. And data is the key to that. And the cloud is I think, you know, an essential part of what will allow that data to be presented to any relevant provider at the point of care. So for me, you know, the opportunity here really is to power the next generation health system with data as critical infrastructure, allowing, you know, care outside the hospital as well as inside the hospital.
I agree with Rachel. You beautifully put that the open standards. So, for me, the promising areas for collaboration would be if I have to pick three areas, I would really agree with Rachel and then say, yes, standards. The European healthy data space is showing us how these open standards like FHIR and the OpenEHR can prevent vendor lock-in. Without them, we risk locking the health data into proprietary silos where patients lose that portability. So no longer we can, if the data becomes interoperable. Standards are our insurance for sovereignty and choice. And the second promising area for the collaboration is federated learning. We all have seen during the COVID, hospitals in Europe ran AI models across multiple sites to predict that oxygen needs without ever moving patient data. So the data which stayed local, but the insights went global. This shows us that we can innovate at scale while respecting the privacy and sovereignty of a particular country or a privacy of the patient. And the third area for collaboration, I see the data sharing agreements. Like COVID, again, giving the COVID example where it has taught us through GIS AID, that global genomic sharing platform, that when we have trust contracts in place, collaboration saves lives. We have seen today morning the first session, the speaker has spoken about the empathy in healthcare. So trust is also very, very important. When we have to trust and we need to have the trust contracts in place, collaboration saves lives. We tracked variants and accelerated vaccines because countries choose to share that data. The same logic applies to the rare diseases and also AI validation, where no single country has enough data today. So, standards, federated models, open standards, federated models, and data sharing agreements are the three major blocks or areas of collaboration for me.
Brilliant, thank you, Padma. And I suppose that's a sort of closing summary there, and obviously all three of you have both presented the value and the opportunity that comes from the sharing that could be enabled by cloud, also addressing multiple aspects of the risk and the challenge. So in terms of Rachel and Padma, you touched there on the potential for lock-in in terms of the data, you know, the proprietary data structures that can lock us into a given EPR vendor, for example. And actually, Rafael, as part of your presentation, there was a key point in there, I think, about the nature of hybrid cloud, the fact that you're not only going with Azure or AWS or Google, you are deliberately going for a software as a service model across all of them to prevent a creation of a new type of lock-in over there, having gotten away from the issue of data lock-in.
Yes, and we are working to be easy, go to cloud and phase out from cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's important. If you see the news last week, the principal responsible in French Microsoft, they can't prove that they have the governance of the data.
The data actually will not go to the US, even though you've ticked the box that says keep it in the EU. Yes.
It's important that you know that. For my point of view, if we can work with primary data for primary use on-prem, it's more secure, and secondary data you can use cloud. In Portugal, our approach is when I talk about cloud is private cloud or public cloud. In Portugal, we are finished our data lake infrastructure with 3 petabytes of space for collecting data. We are started with healthcare data, but I have talked with my colleague that have the project. I only have the infrastructure, and I designed the infrastructure for the data lake. And I think it's very important because we all talk about health data, but we have to have more layers to have the relationship between healthcare data with environmental data, with industrial data, because one results for one region with healthcare data with the same collections or the same standard in another region. If you analyze the industrial data and other things, the result will be different, okay? So we don't have to, we don't reliable in standards solutions for AI, because you have silos of geographical results that are very important.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, a very interesting point there, and perhaps unsurprisingly, given the topic of the day and the group we've got in the room, we've of course focused in very strongly in our discussion so far today on the health and the patient data, but actually, of course, we are increasingly seeing other aligned data sets need to come together with this. So the smart city data sets, for example, which actually start to become part of the delivery of care as well. Wonderful. Well, thank you all three for your discussions. I think I'd like to open to the room in terms of any questions from the audience for our panel. There's another one.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. My name is Tiago Taveira. I'm representing the sponsor MTG. This topic is very dear to me because my career started as a family physician, then moved to tech. And I've always wondered how much do we really protect the assets and this extremely valuable asset of data. And I see that the point really boils down to how do you preserve trust, and at some point, how can you technically demonstrate trust is there? So more than showing trust through compliance or showing trust through contract, how can you demonstrate through, at the cryptographic level, if you want, that trust has been preserved? So you don't need to really show, in the end, you don't really need to trust because you have the proof that nothing happened. And I've been reflecting upon this concept, going not only through, we need not to trust our vendors, but we should also not trust ourselves as professionals that manage these elements, because they are so sensitive. And as this amount of data grows, we also need, as professionals inside institutions, to say, how can we demonstrate we have done nothing wrong? And there are 2 or 3 aspects I would like to share. I think they may contribute in the direction of what we believe in. One is having this redundancy of the providers, for sure, but also looking at, we nowadays have very mature open source technologies on Apache Foundation and on Cloud Native Foundation, and there are very strong projects that have already graduated and that they can be deployed whether on cloud or on-prem. So building an infrastructure that can be redundant across whatever providers, whatever local or physical or cloud infrastructure, it's possible. And if we look at other industries, for example, in telecommunications, that is very, very, very well done for a long time. And the other point I think we can add upon the transparency of the code is also thinking about, as vendors that provide solutions, is it that hard that we provide visibility on our code? So do we really need to protect your code from your client, or can you trust your client that they can see your code, potentially not changing it, but at least see it and build your code on their infrastructure? So they don't need to trust that what you're putting on the table is a black box. It's actually white, just like what you do with the open source, but maybe not pushing too hard to make everybody open source publicly. And lastly, taking from the defense, an approach that I see still very early stages in healthcare, which is taking client-side encryption on the full cycle. So we worry about a lot, and correctly in my vision, that what happens on the other side when we provide, when we buy a service or a managed service. But if the service works with the keys that I only have, I can be sure that on the other side nothing's going to happen. And there is very interesting work happening in defense, doing end-to-end client-side encryption, and backing that with hardware security modules, so that at the end of the day, if you treat healthcare data and sovereignty problem the same way defense is being treated, you can also port in all those learnings into healthcare and really protect data in cloud and pretty much work with whoever you want, but without sacrificing trust. Of course, that is at the cost of additional technical complexity, but I think that could really pay off if that can be built, because at the end of the day, if we move more and more into having genomic data next to the data sets of EHR data, I think at some point this data will be really an asset of ambition, not just for training AI, but for developing warfare. And if we do not secure that properly, I think that there may be ways to develop warfare based on exploiting data that goes at the genomic level. And so I really think it's a matter of really stressing importance that we look at healthcare data more and more as a sovereign and a national security matter, even more than privacy, which I really think it must be done, but it's really more a sovereignty. And the more and more appetite large language models are going to have for data, the more I think there will be an incentive to risk compliance if you don't have it secured at the technical level.
Yep. And thank you. A couple of really interesting points in there. I'll take Chair's prerogative, I suppose, to address the latter one and in terms of that data sovereignty. And absolutely, of course, what we've tried over years now, 25 years in the NHS for myself and all the grey hair and scars that comes with it, to separate the data from the application. And I think what you're referencing there is a necessity to come up with a means of separating the data from its hosted environment as well. So secure that with your own keys, whatever the technical route we go to for that. So absolutely, and there's a fundamental underlying interesting point there on there's a different level of assurance, isn't there? What do we as the experts in this space need to assure us that we've done the right things to secure the data? Your point on the use of our citizens' genomic data as a weapon in the future is a fascinating point. I think even more fundamental than that now, without the availability of this data, our minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, day-to-day ability to operate our health services diminishes. So if we were a foreign actor attacking the UK, actually, yes, you could just shut down our hospitals, take out all our EPRs. It's entirely plausible. So there's there's all sorts of attack vectors that the UK and other nations need to be aware of with this. I think the other point I'd just like to raise out of that and take to our panelists is there's something here, and again, it relates to us all in this room as the experts in this space. What can we understand and what can we communicate to the citizen? Because the citizen's not going to understand any of that. They're not going to understand why that does or doesn't make things safe. So actually, if I can go to Padma and then Rachel, because I know from both of your perspectives, an area you've worked on previously, is translating that to the citizen. So actually, we're not expecting them to understand the details of end-to-end encryption, but actually they can put the trust in us and experts that we have thought of that. So
Yes, and I don't think the citizen is monolithic. It is a spectrum. For instance, I work with citizens use AI in the US, and they would want to see all of their audit trail and exactly how it's encrypted, right the way through to some citizens that just want to know that somebody's assured it that they trust, right? So it's not, citizens have a set of needs. One example that comes up from what we've just been talking about there for me is actually the way in which the VA in the American military actually secures trauma data for their patients. I've actually worked with a company that does that. They also secure all of the data, that company, in the New York Stock Exchange and military data as well. We need to get new tool sets into healthcare over time to make sure that we're both secure, as we talked about, but also so that we can provide to those citizens that need to see exactly what has happened with that data, how it's been secured. And I think we're going to end up developing sort of kite marks or seals that basically say this has been assured and audited, and there will be independent assurance of how that data has been marshaled. So that's kind of my view of how it will move out. But citizens, I am very much aware, are not one group of needs or one group of interest.
Adam, if I can just couch it in terms, I know you've got a particular interest in the ethics of cross-border sharing. So actually, in that world where the availability of data across borders could be a threat to nations, how do we balance that with the ethics of cross-border sharing to support improvement of patient care?
Yeah, so we need to basically make it available. The data should be transparent, and the citizens, I agree with Rachel as well, citizens must know where their data resides and who are accessing it. And the shared governance boards like multi-country should come forward and have a shared governance boards need to be established for cross-border data projects, and certification and assurance frameworks in line with the ISO or NISA standards, and involve patients and civil society in governance. Designing the governance, not just policymakers and vendors. Anyhow, policymakers and vendors need to be there, but definitely patients need to be there, because patients' knowledge is very much important for how to build the trust. When patients know where their data is residing and who or how it is being accessed, it creates a visibility and control. For example, we all access our bank, online banking, and we know how much money we have drawn or where our money is going. So that transparency is there. So similarly, we need to have the patient's trust bring into the system. So this reduces the fear of hidden exploitation. If patients can see audit trails, who has accessed their data, when it is being accessed, and why they have access, they are more likely to share data for research and innovation. It's like transparency doesn't just protect patients, it empowers them, and informed patients are more willing to share data responsibly. That fuels our innovation.
All three. I'm sure Rafael and others will be happy to take questions in the break afterwards, but I'm sure Paul's going to start waving me down if I don't stop us here. So please all join me in thanking our three panellists, so Padma, Rachel and Rafael. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to the conversations for the rest of the day.
Yes, thank you. And a round of applause for the moderator, please.
Thanks, David.
Okay, so now we have already on the line Dr. João Breda from WHO, Director of Patient Quality in the Athens office for WHO Europe. João, can you signal that you are listening to me?
I can hear you very well. What about you?
Okay. We're fine here in Cardiff. So sorry that you cannot join us as planned initially for 2 sessions, but at least we're going to have the chance to hear from you. So I think the floor is all yours now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And
Here until 12:40.
all the best from Porto. I'm here at the WHO conference on AI and health, which also relates with a lot of what we're doing today. I'm going to share with you. I need to request to share my slides. I have a couple of slides to illustrate a bit what I'm planning to say. The discussion today is really on quality of care and patient safety, and therefore I would give you a tour of what we are doing in our office, the WHO Athens Quality of Care and Patient Safety Office, which is based in Greece, but belongs to WHO Europe, and also, of course, linked to the aspects of data, digital health, and AI, which is obviously an area where we've been working and really accelerating in the last time. So let me see if I can now share my slides. Here you go. I think it should be okay. Can you see it? I believe it should be possible to see it. You can? Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. So basically, the WHO European region is composed of 53 countries. And one of the challenges we are faced with is really the issue of equity and inequalities. We have huge disparities in many health indicators. And if we look at this one in the slide, just basically life expectancy, you see the differences between East and West and North and South, and really differences between men and women. And really a lot of this has to do, of course, with many factors, some of them which are related with behavior, but also in the way our health systems perform. And they also link with quality and patient safety. We all acknowledge, and we are challenged also with the progress of an increase in the prevalence of many chronic non-communicable diseases. And more worrying is really that you see more and more these comorbidities, a combination of several problems altogether, particularly as the population ages in many countries of our region, especially those which are part of the European Union, or those who are more in the group of the most affluent countries. I remind you that we include many countries which are on the eastern part of Europe, including Central Asia, but also some neighboring countries of the EU, like North Macedonia, Montenegro, Balkans, Albania, and therefore there's a huge variety here. Certainly, one of the elements we've been looking into is really the chronic non-communicable diseases and the differences in terms of the quality of the services provided, and looking into how digital approaches can really improve. And this has been shown, improve the situation. This has been shown. It's nothing new to anyone, but how we can really make sure that we can use these new opportunities to really help countries leapfrogging, those who are lagging behind, but also within countries, how we can really use these opportunities in an ethical way, having really having always on top of our mind the issues of equity, trying to move forward in implementing these really great new opportunities. We have basic elements where quality of care and patient safety and challenges, and I bring here an illustration on hypertension, because this week we're launching a very important global report on hypertension, and nothing new, but guess what? The main let's say challenge we face with hypertension is really a matter of quality of care and patient safety, because we are not able, first of all, to identify those living with this relatively easy condition to take under control in the good, high-performing health system. And many of those that we already know that actually have hypertension, they don't have it under control. So a very basic, let's say, health condition that can be easily identified and treated when necessary. We do have enormous challenges there, and we really need to use digital opportunities to better tackle these aspects. Another one aspect I would like to share with you, and we deal with a lot, is really on safety, and patient safety is critical. We have globally, one out of 10 patients is armed when going to receive some type of healthcare. and this is a global data, but the European region, we have huge variations, but we're not that far from this, and we do have countries where the situation is really tremendously challenging, and therefore it's really an area where we are starting to collect more reliable data, which is, let's say, shareable and it's comparable in this area. But just to say that there's also an area where there's a long way to go in the WHO European region to address that. And because we are worried with these challenges, but we see the opportunities to use digital and AI as tools really to improve and to tackle the inequities aspects in this area. One of our, let's say, core business elements is really to work around data. And we are very proud that last year we launched for the first time a report that collects information and data about the situation in all countries that belong to the WHO European region, the 53 countries. We call it, it's a report produced for the first time. It has also a nice compilation of a country fact sheets. It's called Taking the Pulse of Quality of Care and Patient Safety in the WHO European region. Is downloadable and available online. And one of the challenges we were faced with, we looked at more than 100 indicators. And for most countries, we can only collect data for a very small minority of these indicators. And in many cases, it's really hardly comparable. Therefore, it's a major challenge that when sometimes we are discussing highly sophisticated and more high-tech cutting-edge approaches, there are many instances of our lives and in many cases, people living in certain places or in certain circumstances where data is not at all available at the minimum. So it was a call for countries to do more. Many countries needed to establish action plans on quality of care and patient safety, and they don't have it. There was also an identified need for improvement in the area of patient safety, as already shared before. And really, we also try to incentivize or to motivate countries to do more based on their own country profiles. So significant aspects in terms of patient safety, which place the WHO European region not so much ahead of other regions. Normally, we sort of have a slightly better performance, but not in this case. There's many things where we're lagging behind, and you have some examples in this slide. So only about, let's say, 1/3 of the countries sort of have either national action plans on quality and patient safety or individual ones. So really a lot of work to be done here. Having plans doesn't mean that we do things on the ground, but having a plan is something which is very important. And those plans, in many cases, they don't include yet the provisions around AI and data. And we also noticed that. One of the things I would like to highlight is that we really always look for patient engagement, representativeness, involvement, co-creation approaches with patients. And it's really, in a way, if I may say, a bit appalling that in our region, in most cases, only 1 out of 10 countries include patients in the process of health policy and specifically on quality of care and patient safety. So the report also includes a series of indicators that if you would be interested, you can have a look. And we ended up with a selection of those where we can find better opportunities for comparison across Europe, but really huge difficulties in finding data in many countries and making sure that countries report both to OECD, to WHO. We have joint data collection opportunities as well, but also more there needs to be done. Clearly an issue around mental health, particularly for children and adolescents. In our office, our program in Athens, we have a specifically dedicated initiative on quality of mental health services for children and adolescents. And one of our most, let's say, iconic products is that we developed last year standards for mental health services, for quality of mental health services for children and adolescents. And one of the things we also realize is of course, that the use of digital tools and AI and all those opportunities also need to be discussed in that context. And here, just an illustration with this slide, where you can see that really in many cases, there is still a lot of work to be done in the area of quality of mental health services. So this is something we do in quality of care and patient safety. The WHO European region is the only one to have a specifically dedicated from the 6 regions globally, specifically dedicated office and team working on this area, which is based in Greece. And this is only possible with the support of the Greek government. This is why I always like to bring these couple of photos that illustrate the moment where we signed the agreement to start working on this. Our office covers basically 4 areas: technical support to countries, where we work directly with 24 countries, innovation and knowledge, policy analysis, and then bringing together the networks. On the innovation dimension, we're working with many countries. I give the example of Greece and Romania, for example, where we're working around indicators on quality of care, but looking into development of platforms that are interconnected, that for the first time we're collecting data from different sources that were not working and talking together before, and really trying to move forward in this area of also using the assistance of AI to make sure that we can make sense of the quality data, which was sparse, not collected, not put together. And for the first time, we are doing this in these 2 countries. We also are very keen about engaging young people, and everything we do, particularly for them, we always engage them from the initial stages in the process of co-creation. And we did that with all our mental health, quality of mental health products, and we're expanding that also to the other areas of quality of care, same with patient safety. So we are very grateful to the support that we have from the government of Greece. Here's a picture with the Prime Minister and with the Minister of Health, which are great supporters of our initiatives. By helping Greece and receiving support from Greece, we are working with 53 countries in our region, and very intensively with more than 20 of those. These are just some illustrations of some of the, let's say, products that we have recently issued. They're all available online, and I would really suggest that if you have an interest, to reach out and please have a look. Some more of a European nature, and others more of a specific country-specific nature, like the ones you can see in the slides for Greece or also for Romania. So here again, another example. So thank you very much. My last slide, it's an illustration, photo of the day when we received the award of the best WHO team last year for 2024. We are very proud of that. So if you have any questions, please feel free. Obviously, one of the areas where we are really invested, we just had a presentation on AI, quality of care and patient safety here in Porto, and WHO will be working much more on this area in the coming couple of years. Thank you very much.
Before you go, I have a quick question for you, and I look at everybody's eyes because we are just 5 minutes lunch, but I hope you answer quickly. It says, what would you think is the relation, João, of health data and secondary usage of health data could affect your work right now at WHO Athens office?
Tremendously, because our focus is on improving outcomes, and outcomes that matter to patients and their families. And outcomes are basically measurement, and the use of this data is more and more important. This has not always been the case, and therefore this focus for us is absolutely critical. The use of data at all levels, all type of data. I mean, observing everything that's related with equity, with ethics, and all of that. We're discussing that here in Porto, but issues like really making sure that we have larger data set, that we have more information on outcomes, that we have more information on impact. This is absolutely critical. So the use of this data for us is absolutely central. And I have to say that some of the biggest projects we are working now, both in Greece, but if you want also in Romania, these are projects which are really based and depending on our ability to make sense of the data that we can bring all together from different sources in an ethical and equity-driven way.
From João. Emmanuel, Bacry is not online. I hope he can join us in the afternoon. So we have also with Steve here, which will be on site and complete.
Sorry, I am online. I'm sorry, I arrived 5 minutes left.
Okay, Emmanuel, you are here. Okay, so now we have a dilemma because our lunch starts in 5 minutes. Are you able to present fast, or can you join us in the afternoon? Can you join us in the afternoon? In 45 minutes?
In a little more than 40. No, I have another meeting. I'm sorry.
Okay, so briefly, if you like, so can you briefly present us what your slides? And unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. Would that be okay?
I can do it in 15 minutes if you want, or tell me how long, and I'll manage.
We would love 5 minutes, but maybe if a bit more, it would be okay, because we have lunch starting at 45. The floor is all yours. Go ahead.
Let me, yes. So let me tell you a little bit. So sorry for, I had to restart my computer and install another OS, and that was a mess. But okay, I'm sorry for being late. Very happy to be with you, and sorry for delaying your lunch. So I'll be talking about the French Health Data Hub. The hub is a public interest group that was created about 6 years ago, and which aims at facilitating access to health data for public interest research. And public interest research, of course, is a very large notion. It allows accessing for private sectors. This main mission can be divided into several axes. We play a role in the governance. You see on the left, we have a secure state-of-the-art platform, and of course, we work a lot on data. As of today, we are supporting more than 200 innovative projects, meaning that we are really supporting at many different steps of their user journey. Let me go fast. Let me tell you first of all about the data. There is one database that plays a very important role for us. It's called National System Health Database, SNDS in French. It's not a clinical database, it's an accountant database. We're very lucky in France because almost everybody is reimbursed partially of almost everything, almost the healthcares. So this database is about the reimbursement. So we have in this database a footprint of all the healthcare pathways of everybody in France. So that's very valuable. We have basically it's made of 3 databases that are linked together. Here is the outcare database. So when you're out of the hospital, here it's in the hospital, and this is the medical cause of death. It is a very valuable database that has been used for many years for pharmacoepidemiology and pharmacovigilance. And today it is also used to be chained with clinical database because it doesn't have any clinical information. So basically, when you work on a clinical database, you don't have any information about the patients before entering the database or after leaving the database. It gives you all that information. So it's very valuable, and particularly for AI projects. So actually, this is what we call the main database of the SNDS. There is another part in the SNDS today that we call the catalog of the Health Data Hub. And the catalog of the Health Data Hub is a list of databases that have been identified of national importance and that should be ready to use on our platform. So it means it's copied on our platform. It is natively linked to this claim database that I just told you about. And for the hot data, for the data that are still live, it is updated regularly so that when you get an authorization to access the data is ready and we can open a secret space very, very quickly. This catalog involves 22 databases as of today, but every year it increases. We have rare disease national database. We have Alzheimer database. It can have images. It can have biotest. I mean, many kind of data. About the platform. So all the projects we are supporting do not operate on our platform. It would depend on the project. But for those, it's about 70%, we would open a secret space with the exact data they need or they asked for, they were authorized to. We are talking about pseudonymized data, or only pseudonymized data. So we took out the directly identifying fields. And then they can operate within this secured space. They cannot take any data out. They have to have validation, human validation for that, but they can operate from their laptop. In their secured space, they would find a list of softwares, some open source suite like the AI suite and so on, but also some private companies' softwares if needed. And of course, this catalog of softwares increases with time. So I said that not all the projects that we're supporting do use the platform. Basically, our platform serves two purposes. If you need big computational power, we are not going to have cluster of GPUs in all the data warehouses of all hospitals. Or if you need to, if you have a project that is with several centers, and you need to do some chaining. This is extremely hard to operate because you have to go back to the person and go down and chain all the database and so on. We industrialize this part. It is made out of the hub because in the hub, we only access to pseudonymized data, but it has been industrialized out of the hub and we are able now to link any database going back to the security number of the person. So this is also something that is very technical and we feel like it's the role of a national platform. Apart from these two paradigmatic cases, we do not push people to use our platform. Here is an example of a project that was a success story for the hub. You have a startup, they are doing telesurveillance for pacemakers. They follow 50,000 pacemakers and they wanted to develop AI algorithm to estimate the risk of cardiac complication, but they didn't have the label cardiac complication in the pacemakers. So we chained their data with the claim database. In the claim database, you see that somebody was hospitalized for cardiac complication. They trained their algorithm, and now the algorithm is FDA certified and certified for Europe and is deployed. We work with, I'm going to skip some slides. We work with data warehouse in hospitals. We are big lobbyists for that, to have a network of interoperable data warehouses. This is the kind of projects we are supporting. So it could be led by big companies, startups, academics, any kind of stuff. We are very much involved into AI. As I told you, we are part of the national strategy for AI. This is one project very important for us for democratizing LLM, the use of LLM in the medical context. We are leading a project with 30 actors, 20 hospitals, 10 research teams specialized in NLP and health. And we are also have Mistral and another startup which is called Recital. And we are going to develop a lot of open sources deliverables in this project. Now, and these will be my last slides about Europe. I mean, you've heard, of course, about the European Health Data Space, and we play a very important role in this, in the deployment of this new regulation that has been voted now almost, I mean, less than a year ago. Because we led this pilot project that was the pilot health data at EU. So that's the pilot project of the European Health Data Space regulation for secondary use. We are not involved into into primary use. Okay. So this pilot the goal of the pilot was to test a lot of stuff and give some feedback to the commission so that they would understand how to deploy in the best way the health data space. We had 17 partners, so we did several things. It's over now, but we did several things. We connected a few national platforms on a network. We opened a central portal that is able to where you can connect and send a query on the metadata about the data available on this network. So you could ask, is there any diabetics database and how they look like and so on. We also developed a unique form to access the data, so a form that would be valid for different countries. And of course, we ran some use cases, some concrete use cases to understand where the bottlenecks were and so on. So some of them went well, some of them blocked, like we had the genetic use case, and we were supposed to link genetic data with clinical data, and that was a nightmare. So we were a proof of concept to understand where the bottlenecks were, and I think we did a good job. We are involved in many other projects within this space, and we are leading this shaped project that you see that is about how the relationship between European Health Data Space Regulation, AI Act, and how medical devices involving AI could use this space and how we can help them from the development to deployment. So also, again, I mean, we have several use cases and we are going to publish some guides. And finally, we are also heading this direct grant that is a preparation to the European Health Data Space. So we are working with a lot of data producers in order to set up metadata catalogs according to a standard that we defined during the pilot. It's called Health DCAT. It's a standard that will be used by the European Data Space for metadata catalog. It's open source. You can find it on the web. So now we are actually putting metadata for 20 French database into this format. So that's the SHAPE project, and I think I'm done. I did my best to make it short.
Emmanuel, I'm not sure if you can hear the applause here. But Emmanuel, before we go, and we are all pressed for lunch, and thank you so much for having the trouble to stay also with us here. We have two ministries of healthcare here in the summit. I will tell you the countries. It's Portugal and Cape Verde. They are here. I'm not sure if there are any more authorities from outside the UK. Health authorities are here, but at least two. And I know for a fact Portugal is just creating its data lake. Cape Verde is also aspiring to have a data lake like pretty similar to what you have your exemplary work. What piece of advice could you give to these other healthcare colleagues from these different ministries of healthcare?
Wow. There are so many. But the hardest thing, I think, and the real bottlenecks is to be able to onboard a lot of data producers on this common project of using health data, sharing health data. So onboard, it means several things. To onboard the data producers, you have to make him understand why he or she has an interest in being onboarded. What would she gain from that, or he would gain from that? And that's not that easy. It's not just the law that says you should share, because that's not a good incentive. Just follow the law, because they will share it, but they won't like sharing it, so it's not going to work. So they have to understand that it's good for their databases that will be accessed a lot, and they will be rewarded by that. So that's the first thing. Now, onboarding also means being interoperable. Interoperability is a very complex thing to operate, so it should start at the very beginning of a data lake. So thinking about the standards you are going to use, and onboard the data producers on the standard, so that they agree at the very beginning. Don't define your standards your way and then say to the data producers, okay, now if you want to join, this is what you have to do. You have to be sure that everybody agrees at the very beginning so that you onboard everybody. That would be my advices.
Okay, thank you so much, Emmanuel. I think we have to break now for lunch, as we have to start soon after. May I ask you, I forgot also to mention, we have also here Basque Country government representative. He was listening to your advices. Would it be okay, Emmanuel, if I liaise you with these 4 persons so we have a conversation offline on and maybe share younger slides and exchange experience, because I find France is having an interesting exemplary case and there's lots to learn and lots to share. And of course, why not also with Wales, because Wales is also establishing here. David will take this note, perhaps. David, you'll take the connection with Emmanuel. Thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy the lunch that will be served in the room next door. Emmanuel, it was a pleasure to have you here. Take care and be well. Padma, if you are here, we are going to break for lunch now. You enjoyed the session so far? So far, so good. Fantastic. Okay, so let's have a break now for lunch. We'll see in 45 minutes.